There is a strange thing happening in our time. A man walks among us who is very much alive, and yet, in some quiet way, he has already died. Not because his body has failed him. His heart still beats. His lungs still breathe. But something far more subtle has stopped moving. He wakes in the morning, and before he meets the day, before he meets himself, he reaches for a small glowing rectangle to see if the world has decided whether he is acceptable today. And this is the peculiar tragedy. He is not asking who he is. He is asking who he is allowed to be. He scrolls past lives that do not know him, and with every movement of his thumb, he quietly shrinks. His sense of worth dissolves into silence, into unread messages, into imagined judgments that were never actually spoken. And without realizing it, he has done something extraordinary. He has handed the keys to his inner peace to strangers who will never remember his name. This is the first illusion. He cannot escape the belief that approval creates identity. You see, when a man lives this way, he is not living at all. He is auditioning, always auditioning, performing for an audience that is just as frightened and uncertain as he is. And the cruel joke is this: the stage will collapse long before the play is over. So he continues year after year, not because it brings him joy, but because the idea of standing alone inside himself feels more terrifying than never feeling whole. Now, because this way of living is exhausting, he turns inward, not with kindness, but with punishment. He replays moments that no longer exist. A conversation from years ago, a sentence he wishes he had not spoken, a silence he interprets as failure. He carries these memories not as lessons, but as weapons. And every day he uses them on himself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, quietly, without drama, that a man has power over his own mind and almost nothing else. But power feels like responsibility, and responsibility feels heavy. Punishment, on the other hand, feels familiar. Punishment feels deserved, so he chooses suffering, because suffering feels like control. And so he builds a museum in his mind, every room filled with regret, every exhibit polished daily with guilt. Open at all hours, free entry, no exit signs. Then something curious happens. He mistakes movement for transformation. He stays busy, always busy. Courses, plans, systems, routines, endless motion. But motion is not the same thing as direction. A man can run in circles for an entire lifetime and call it progress simply because he is tired. Stillness frightens him, because in stillness there is nothing to distract him from the simple truth that he has been avoiding himself. Seneca noticed this long ago. He said, "We do not lack time, we waste it." And the waste comes not from doing nothing, but from doing everything except being present. Then comes comparison, a quiet, poisonous habit. He looks outward and believes he is looking at reality, but what he is actually seeing is theater, costumes, lighting, carefully chosen moments. He compares his private uncertainty with public confidence, his doubts with other people's highlights, and he always loses. He never stops to wonder what pain is hidden just outside the frame. He never considers that peace is not visible, that sleep, real sleep, cannot be photographed. So he concludes he is behind. Behind whom? Behind an illusion. And when the weight becomes too heavy, he tells himself gentle lies, comfortable lies, the kind that tuck him in and promise tomorrow will be different. I'm just being realistic. I'm protecting myself. I'll begin when I'm ready. And tomorrow never arrives, because tomorrow is an idea, not a place. Now listen carefully, because this is subtle. At some point, he decides the world is against him, the economy, the past, other people, circumstances. Victimhood becomes his identity because it explains everything without requiring anything. It gives him a story without demanding change. But the Stoics knew something simple and devastating: if you are always a victim, you are never free. He lives in futures that never come. He rehearses tragedies that never happen. He experiences pain in advance, again and again, mistaking anxiety for intelligence. He suffers imaginary deaths daily and calls it preparation. And when that becomes unbearable, he escapes into memory, old wounds, old triumphs, anything but now. The past becomes a sanctuary even when it hurts, because at least it is familiar. And familiarity feels like safety. He chases happiness the way one chases shadows, faster and faster, wondering why it never arrives. He believes fulfillment lies somewhere else, in something else, in someone else. And all the while, the present moment waits patiently, unnoticed. He fills silence with noise because silence asks uncomfortable questions. Questions like, who are you when nothing is being achieved? Who are you when nothing is being proven? And beneath all of this, deeper than fear, deeper than habit, there is one final refusal. He will not forgive himself for being human, for wanting, for failing, for hurting, for needing. He believes perfection is strength and vulnerability is weakness. never realizing that this belief is precisely what keeps him imprisoned. And so he becomes tired, very tired, not because life is heavy, but because he is carrying a self that never needed to be carried in the first place. Now here is the quiet truth. Nothing dramatic needs to happen. Nothing needs to be destroyed. Nothing needs to be proven. The chains do not break. They disappear the moment they are seen for what they are. You do not become free by becoming better. You become free by realizing you were never what you were trying to fix. And when that is seen, not intellectually, but deeply, the struggle softens. The noise fades. And for the first time, you are not performing life. You are simply living it right now. The strange thing is nothing new needs to be added. No strength needs to be imported. No identity needs to be built. No future version of you needs to arrive to save the present one. This is where the misunderstanding has always been. The man believes freedom is something he must earn, through discipline, through suffering, through becoming harder, colder, sharper. But freedom is not a reward at the end of endurance. Freedom is what remains when the struggle to become someone finally falls away. You see, the mind loves effort. It loves projects. It loves journeys with destinations, because effort creates the illusion of control. And so the man tells himself, once I fix my habits, I will be at peace. Once I master my thoughts, I will be free. Once I become disciplined enough, calm enough, strong enough, then life will begin. But life does not wait at the end of improvement. Life is already happening, quietly, while he is distracted by self-correction. The Stoics were never teaching domination of the mind. They were pointing to something far more unsettling. They were pointing to the fact that the mind does not need to be dominated at all. Thoughts arise the way waves arise. You do not command the sea to calm itself. You watch. You allow. And in that allowance, the storm loses its authority. The man exhausts himself trying to silence his thoughts, never noticing that thoughts have no power unless they are believed. A thought is only a sound in the head. It is not a command. It is not a prophecy. It is not you. The moment this is seen, not argued with, not fought, something loosens. The grip softens. He realizes he has been standing on his own foot, shouting in pain, demanding the world fix it. And when he steps off, nothing dramatic happens. Just quiet. Now in this quiet, something deeply uncomfortable appears. Responsibility. Not blame, not guilt, not self-punishment. Responsibility in its original sense, the ability to respond. He sees that while he cannot control events, opinions, or outcomes, he can choose the lens through which they pass. Not by force, but by clarity. Marcus Aurelius was not calm because life was gentle. He was calm because he understood where life ended and interpretation began. Most suffering is not caused by what happens, but by the demand that what happened should not have happened. The man has been arguing with reality, and reality, you may have noticed, never loses an argument. So the moment he stops resisting what already is, something extraordinary occurs. Energy returns, not excitement, not motivation, energy, the kind that comes from no longer fighting shadows. He stops explaining himself, not because he is cold, but because he no longer needs permission to exist. He stops comparing, not because he feels superior, but because comparison no longer makes sense. He stops chasing happiness, not because he has given up, but because he sees happiness was never hiding anywhere. It was buried under effort. He begins to move through life with a quiet seriousness, not grim, not heavy, simply present. And presence, it turns out, is deeply unsettling to those who live entirely in performance. People feel it. They cannot name it, but they feel it. Because a man who is no longer begging reality to be different carries a certain gravity, not dominance, not arrogance, stillness, and stillness cannot be manipulated. He listens more than he speaks, not because he has nothing to say, but because he finally understands that wisdom enters through silence. He forgives himself, not as an act of mercy, but as an act of clarity. He sees that punishing himself never made him better. It only made him smaller. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is releasing the fantasy that the past could have been different. And with that release, time returns to the present. Now, where life has always been waiting, this is where the transformation quietly completes itself. Not with a declaration, not with a victory speech, but with a subtle shift from resistance to cooperation. Life stops being something he is trying to win. It becomes something he is participating in, fully. And here is the final paradox, the one the mind resists the most. The moment he stops trying to be free, he is. Because freedom was never the result of control. It was the absence of unnecessary control. Nothing has changed, and everything has changed. He is not special. He is not chosen. He is not above anyone. He is simply no longer at war with himself. and that is enough.